You are listening to Passage to Profit, the Inventor Show on WOR 710 with Richard and Elizabeth Gearhart. And our guest today is a good friend of mine, Liz Goll Lerner. I love Liz and I love what she does. She helps people fix themselves as much as possible. Better for some than others.
What are you doing after the show?
From the inside out. But seriously, I feel like I've had to do a lot of work on my brain, and she helps business owners figure out who they are and how to make themselves work better. So welcome, Liz.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
So you have a number of different things going on. You and I had talked about a few of them. One of them was being present.
Yeah. So one of the things that I think is super, super important about living your life to the fullest and having your business operate to the fullest is really being able to be present in the moment. So you always know actually what's going on inside of you and what's going on around you, and you can make the right choices in your conversations and your strategy, and really helping things move forward in a really cohesive, strategic way.
So you've been doing brain work for a long time. You have a practice?
Right. So I'm a psychotherapist and coach, transformational coach, and I help people actually figure out. I'm working on a fabulous new thing called Enlightened Communication through Luminous Living. And through that, people find really what parts of themselves they're working with. So if my protector shows up and I'm not feeling comfortable in my business discussion, I need to know who's operating inside me, and I can say, oh, I'm going to make that protector my champion. And I'm going to actually say, oh, sir, I am so excited to be speaking with you. I have this fabulous product and I am showing you what it's all about, versus, I don't know what they're going to do or say to me and how am I going to react, right? So you come in totally prepared.
Oh, that sounds great.
Wow.
So for staying present, what does it mean to be present? I mean, aren't we present?
So we all think that we're present, right? And many of us might actually be present in the moment. But often we might be having lunch with someone and be thinking actually about the last conversation we had with them instead of actually the conversation we are. So if I'm having lunch with you, Richard, and I'm thinking about, a conversation we had 3 weeks ago, and you, not that you would, of course, but you annoyed me for some reason, and I'm sitting there living that annoyance.
Oh, he can annoy people.
I'll take that as a compliment.
I might not actually be present to what you're actually saying to me. And so I'm really not living in the moment. I'm kind of having a story about you or about the conversation that doesn't allow me to really hear you and really respond to what we're actually talking about in that moment.
So if your mind is wandering, but if you're thinking about something that in some interaction you had several weeks ago with the person that you're talking with, doesn't that sort of add to the conversation in the sense that you're kind of re-experiencing the past and then you're building on that?
Yeah, it can if you use it well. But sometimes what happens is people are actually just reacting emotionally to something that isn't happening in the moment, isn't happening that day. And so unless they're actually going to talk about what's happening or what they're feeling, then their whole conversation is directed by something entirely outside of the realm of the moment. So it could ruin a really good business deal. It could ruin a relationship. It could, somebody sitting there going, I wonder why that person has that expression on their face, or why they're having that tone with me. I don't remember there being any problem, right? But there is. So it doesn't work out so well.
Is there one problem that people have that entrepreneurs especially maybe really is kind of a common thing that they need to work on?
I think that a couple of clients that I have are consistently working on how do they actually say what they want to say to the CEO in their company.
Oh, that is a tough one.
Wow.
Yeah. Right.
So how do they leave, again, this is again present in the moment, how do they leave the conversation in their head about what that person might say or how they might react to their idea or their product, and just come out with it in a way that is aligned with their true heart. You know, they're just actually saying what they mean instead of trying to figure out how it's just best going to be received.
And so what kind of advice do you give them?
So the first thing that I ask people to do is really look back at why they are assuming that someone is going to say something in particular. So looking back into their own history and saying, oh, you know, I've gotten this response a lot before, so I'm just anticipating it, right? So if they stop anticipating it and actually strategize and look at, you know, what their experience of that actual person is versus their history, again, back to present in the moment, they actually speak very, very differently, and they're received very, very differently. And so, and actually the past 3 clients I've had recently have had incredible successes because they all of a sudden decided to, with a little bit of work and looking back, just say, oh, you know, I really get that. I think somebody's going to be judging me in this particular way, and now I see that I have no reason to feel that way.
Oh, that sounds like great advice. I think for me, sometimes when I'm having difficult conversations, I try to sort of objectify and just really speak in terms of facts and not really think so much of, you know, personalities. So if it looks like we're going to have trouble with the patent office on a particular case, I don't, and I'm talking with the client, I just try to take a very neutral approach and say, well, you know, the examiner is saying this and this and this. We can say this and this and this, and, you know, but not charge it with so much emotion that it becomes difficult to talk about.
Right, that's absolutely right. And you do want to go to the facts. I think what happens sometimes is people are not aware of when they're emotionally charged or they get frustrated, and then they have to figure out how to do what you do, right?
That is so true. People don't, and I'm guilty of this myself, don't even realize when I'm reacting emotionally to something sometimes. But I would love it if everybody just kind of did what you're teaching people to do and started fresh with the person each conversation and wasn't like thinking about that stupid thing I said a year ago or whatever, right?
Right. We all do it. We all show up, you know, with our history, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I believe that communication is the key to absolutely every relationship that we have. And if we can understand that we don't have to be reactive, we actually can find that inner neutrality and see what we really want, what our vision is in all of these different situations, then we just multiply our successes over and over again in every conversation we have.
And your programs train people to do that?
Yeah, my program, the Enlightened Communication Through Luminous Living, trains people to do that. I do a Divorce Well and Thrive program that has been remarkably successful. It's a whole different vision of how people change their relationships, reform their relationships.
So
Lots of different.
Is being in the present, though, always a good idea? Because it sounds like if you're just sort of living life in this sort of neutral space, then you lose a lot of the passion and the excitement and the fun.
Right, so being in the present is not necessarily neutral, right? Because it's just conscious. So you've experienced everything more fully, and it gives you choice. So if I'm having an emotional response that I'm not aware of, and I'm reacting to my dear friend Elizabeth, and I'm not actually choosing what's happening in my life right then. I'm reacting to something, and so I'm acting out of that reactivity. But if I sit with you and I say, oh, you know, I'm having this feeling about this other conversation we had, and we sort of talk about that for a moment, then all of a sudden the whole sky opens up, because we then can talk about anything on the planet. We can move forward in our relationship. We can create a new business. We can have an adventure.
It sounds like a pretty high level of maturity. I don't know. It seems like it's kind of hard to do.
So I agree. It's a high level of maturity. And I've seen the most immature people attain it.
Wow.
There's hope for the rest of us.
For all of us.
I see Josh wants to say something over here. Okay, Josh, what?
I think I need a lot of brain work.
It's really heart work. It's connecting the head and the heart.
So jumping in is Josh Scharf, who is going to be on a little bit later, but you're welcome to join the conversation here. Josh is a manufacturing guy who has a lot of manufacturing experience in China. He's going to be talking about the implications of the coronavirus on the supply chain. In other words, is what you're getting full of germs. So,
We're going to focus on
Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Richard.
So Liz, your website is yourinspiredchoices.com.
Correct.
But you have a number of different programs on there. So I
do.
actually wrote some of them down because I wanted to make sure I knew what I was talking about a little bit. So
Please.
I anticipated so I could hopefully be more present.
we're always
present.
present at Passage to Profit.
It is true. Zen.
So one of the catchy names you have on there, oh, we were going to talk about this too. I actually copied and pasted from your website onto a Word document, and there's all these little R's with circles around them next to the names of your...
Yes, I'm a good trademark doobie.
You are! You are!
Oh, wait, you have trademarks?
I do.
Oh, my
I
gosh.
do. I have.
No wonder
I have
you're
3
here.
or 4.
Well, we'll talk about that later. I don't want to not talk about trademarks.
So what I was going to say is the one that caught my eye was getting to the U without the goo, because I feel like I have a lot of goo. What does that mean?
So getting to the U without the goo is really what we've been talking about. So I find that people carry around a sack of heavy stuff from all different kinds of situations in their lives. And the goo, that's the goo, right? And so getting to the U without the goo is actually finding a way to put the sack down, let it be, because we can all do that, and just move forward, right? So again, more presence, but conscious presence. Like, I don't need to carry that old conversation with me. I can just live freely in the moment, feeling everything, not neutral.
And so you don't want to trip over somebody else's sack of goo, right?
No. When those sacks go down,
I'm really taking this in different
they
directions.
disappear, those sacks. They just go. They go, puff. Yeah. But if people do want to learn more about the enlightened communication piece, they can sign up for the list on yourinspiredchoices.com /EC-LL.
Okay, yeah, so I see that you talk about all sorts of things too. Travel is a path to the authentic self.
Yeah, so if I can just ask a question about the
Please.
trademark.
Yeah, let's go back to the trademark.
yeah,
So what made you decide to trademark that?
Because I knew that I would want to be using it in a variety of ways in the future. And so for all of my programs that are trademarked, there's content, there's method, there's documented pieces that I want to make sure are protected. I think sharing information is really important, but I also think ownership of what your creation is really important as well. So I don't know if that fits in the trademark.
Sure. No. So was it just
vernacular.
because it was sort of a catchy phrase, or is this more fundamental to your program?
There's a piece of it that is that it's a catchy phrase. There's a piece of it that it is fundamental. You know, it wouldn't matter so much if I weren't going to do anything with it, or it didn't have some deeper meaning in terms of the business. But it's a creation. That particular piece is a foundational piece, but it's also a creation waiting to happen. So I want that creation to be my creation.
Yeah. So Liz had a question too. So one of her trademarks, the person who's doing her website work and branding and stuff, hasn't been able, for we don't know why, to put the symbol on the words, like after the words, like it is on the rest of her website. So she has one phrase that's trademarked, but it doesn't reflect that.
Doesn't have the registration symbol
Yeah.
on it?
Does it matter?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I mean, the issue is if you don't use the trademark symbol, you're not putting
It's not
people
there.
on notice that it's trademarked. And so if you do ever go after somebody, that can hurt you. So you definitely want to use your trademark symbols properly after the trademark. As soon as the trademark is issued, you want to, as soon as practical, switch over your branding to make sure that you include the R with the circle someplace on the mark. It doesn't have to be huge. It can be tiny. Lots of times, if you'll notice the logos on television or in print, sometimes you can barely see them.
Right.
That's okay, but it should be there.
Yeah, I noticed that was missing, and that is something we will correct right away.
So, thank you for asking. And now, you want to use it every place you use it. If you don't, then you can definitely
Put yourself
risk,
in jeopardy.
Yeah, you could risk losing your rights. So.
Yeah.
So Josh, do you have trademarks too?
I have trademarks, and I always use the appropriate marks because God knows once you commercialize it and once you have it out there, there's always somebody there to take it away from you. So you want to protect it.
Yeah.
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 Especially if it's something good,
Yeah.
Right.
People are going to want.
If it's not good, don't worry about it.
No, you trademark it anyway. I'm just kidding.
So you have a number of different things here to help people, and I do feel like it's really important for people to do the head work, because if you don't do the head work, it just keeps pulling you back to a bad spot, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's head work and it's heart work, right? You know, because it's our internal lives that direct what we do externally. So, for example, in the Divorce Well and Thrive piece, there are a lot of things that people don't even imagine could go smoothly or well. Communication, our inner work affects every single piece of our relationships, our friendships, our business relationships, our marital relationships, our relationships with our children. So, what's so important is to be able to recognize that with a good vision, with some, simple techniques, with a little bit of conscious thought about what you want to do, you really can create the life that you absolutely want to be living.
And how many people do you think you've counseled over the years?
Oh God! You're gonna react that way. I anticipated that. So I've been doing this work for over 30 years. I think millions of people, frankly.
Wow.
Yeah, because I've worked in lots of different situations with lots of people. So.
That's really great, though, to say that you've helped millions of people. That's
Yeah.
that's something to be proud of.
It's
right?
it's extraordinary when you really think about it.
Yeah.
It's exciting.
That's great. So we're coming to the end of our segment now. We're here with Liz Goll Lerner, and she's been talking to us about staying present and doing head and heart work, all things that are essential for entrepreneurs. This is Passage to Profit with Richard and Elizabeth Gerhardt. We'll be right back after this message.